German games market rose 4% in 2025. This is
Mhm.
consumption, not industry, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
To 9.4 bill, driven by hardware sales. But the more interesting point is that the computer and video game submarket sales dropped 13%. Where
Why
the
is that? Why is that more interesting to you?
because what it tells us is that like the revenue model is increasingly tilting towards subscription and in-app purchases even in the console market,
Mhm.
right? That like that tilt, right? This exact thing I said where it's like PlayStation should just eat the cost
Mhm.
because they reap it on the other side with the subscription model or whatever, or the cut they take out of their in-house store, right? I mean, you have complete capture now, right? Nobody's going to GameStop to buy I mean, interestingly, this is even just like game sales of single standalone games
Mhm.
down, right? But they're taking a cut of every transaction that's happening on that platform. That should be sufficient, right?
Mhm.
That is surely making them more revenue
Mhm.
than what single game sales probably were.
Mhm.
So it just seems like a portent of things to come. Like, I'm generally kind of like ugh on the subscription model precisely because it just seems like a bad rap for the consumer in the long run. Welcome to Unboxing, Play and Profit for the Gaming Curious. I'm Lane Nooney.
And I'm Joost van Breunen.
And we're here digging deep on why games matter in today's economy. On the docket today, Friday, April 3rd, Sony's PlayStation prices spike over $100. What's the AI era hardware pressure have to do with it? Plus, is rising consumption in Germany a preview of what's to come? All that and more with your two very inflation adjusted co hosts. But first, we've got some catching up to do. I just let ChatGPT write them at this point. Like,
That's hilarious. Every time you get me with those. I like those. Are you inflation adjusted?
oh, fuck, unfortunately. Probably, yeah. My rent just went up, so.
Oh, but
I
no,
think
not in a good
I
way.
think I'm I think I'm worse than I mean, is there ever a good way for your rent to go up?
No, I mean like your inflation adjustment has not
Yeah,
been.
yeah, was not
You're on the
was
business end, not the
not a yeah, correct. Yeah.
sucks.
Um so what are you drinking there, buddy? What is that?
Whiskey. No,
It's
it's
just a
tea.
big ice cube.
A giant
Let me
mug
tell
of
you,
whiskey.
I'm hot in because we're recording this on a Wednesday rather
Ooh.
than our usual Thursday. So I'm hot off the presses of teaching my big 240 person intra media history class. I don't talk about it a lot because this is not a podcast about the history of media, but this is what I teach this semester. And today was the day on the internet. Like, what is the internet? Where did it come from? So we start with ARPANET, packet switching, internet, TCP/IP. They learn what that is, World Wide Web, and at the end we talk about how the internet became commercialized. And I teach them what America Online is, and they lit up like Christmas trees. They were so bored, and then suddenly, last 15 minutes, like all they could do was ask questions.
That's fantastic. Education in action. That's one. A good
They
job. Good
they
job.
were like, "How much did it cost?" Like, like just the yeah, so many. Like, how did you get? Like, had to explain the CD-ROMs to them.
That's like robot pancakes. What is this?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I was like, oh, you go into chat rooms. And they were like, what are chat rooms? And I was like, wait, like, I was like, chat room? Like, that doesn't, or yeah, because like I showed him this commercial from 1995 about America, where one man shows another man what America Online is, right? And it's like a guy comes over to his friend's house and he's like, let's go to the game. And he's like, hold on, I'm chatting with my kayaking buddies on America Online. And then they say the word America Online like 15 times, and he's like, look, you can buy flowers for your mom. You can research dinosaurs for your kids. You can do it all on America Online. And one of my students is like, what's chatting with your kayaking buddies? And I was like, chat room. And they were like, that doesn't mean anything to
No,
us.
still no.
And I was like, holy shit, like this word, this phrase just like evaporated out of like the youth cultural consciousness. And so I was like, okay, the thing on the side of Twitch
Hmm.
where all the people are. And they were like, oh, it's like Discord. And I was like, yes, there we go. It's like Discord, but you had no control over who was coming in. And
Hmm.
they were all just like, oh my God. It was just,
So good.
yeah.
That's so good. I really like that. I mean, so did they have? I mean, you remember party lines?
No, I'm too young for party lines.
I
Party
thought you were an
lines,
historian. All right, all
I mean,
right.
I
Oh,
don't
that's fine.
remember them. I know about them, but I don't personally remember them.
That
I
was
was,
that
you
was
know,
that was my time.
I was 12, 13 when did I first get on AOL? Probably beginning of high school.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
we.
I was in there. I was using it. I was on those MST3K message boards. I was setting up my own, medieval role playing chat room.
I can't, like Little Lane. Click, 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 click.
Yeah, well, I wasn't allowed out of my house much, so
You know, that's well. That, I mean, that's part of why that's
reading
a good.
Xena fan fiction. That's what I was.
Under your pillow
Yeah,
with like a
exactly.
little flashlight. That's how it starts.
So
It's a no, it's a fascinating like application of self liberation and like enlightenment. I think in that I ran to the digital city of Amsterdam when I was just out of when I just started college, and it just you go through like the cycle of all your little college buddies and all your friends, and everybody's sort of awkward and like go through that phase, and then these digital message boards, you would meet people that were just wildly outside of your usual social circle. So fun. You just like you really get to know some interesting folks that way. So I always embraced that. I always thought that that was very good. However, I'll add you one, right? So while you were doing grown up teaching, I did career day at middle school today.
wow, what's your career, Yost?
Yeah, that was actually a repeated question. So I sort of settled on video games professor, which is a bit of an overstatement to say the least, but
I'm gonna give you
it's
a side eye about that one, but
yeah, no, but it's like you look, they're like 13. They talk the entire time. It's like you got to just kind of. I mean, it's really you're just
it's like,
you're
where's your
slashing.
primary income coming from? Is it being a video games professor?
Yeah, it's not
You're a
that.
businessman.
I'm a person of business. Yes.
So what did they want to know about being a
Well,
video games
the thing is,
professor?
it's like I had never done career day, so I felt a little bit out of my depth. So, for instance, there was also two very nice ladies from the New York Times who started with handing out a newspaper to everybody, and then they say, "Well, we're reporters, and this is what an editor does, and if you do, and by show of hands, who likes to take pictures, and then we have photographers. Here's an online article with the cool pictures of this article that we wrote, and we go on site and ask questions and blah blah blah." And so they walk you through the whole production process. It was very nice. They really did a good job, and I felt like my story felt very improvised by comparison. And so but the question is like, look, the kids go nuts. You just go like, my opening question is like, who here by show of hands plays Roblox? Whole room goes crazy. What about Fortnite? What about Minecraft? And then kind of walk them down this road of, well, if you want to play for a living, if you want to do something in this industry, you should really just be studying literature because games tell stories. You should really be understanding music because music is a key piece. Art, even in Roblox, as unappetizing as steal a brain rot may be, it's a form of art and expression, and so forth and so on. And sort of connect what they do, what they like to do, with something that is a potential career in this field. But I felt like I was sort of promoting becoming game developers, which I wouldn't necessarily encourage
Which is
anybody
not
to.
what you do.
That's not what I do, but I also don't want to encourage people or lull them in some idea that this is like a wonderful career because from what I can tell, it's not.
It's pretty bad. Yeah.
It's pretty bad. So yeah, but I didn't want to hit them with like, I analyzed, about 350 companies on a regular basis and make advisory and
Why
investments
would you think
according.
students wouldn't be responsive to who here likes a spreadsheet? You know?
It's sexy as hell to me. You know, give me a good pivot table. I'm good for the evening. I'm just like a bottle of wine and a data set. I'm out. Like, don't call me. I'll see you in the morning. So no, but it's like I'd never done it. But the most important thing is like I wanted to show for the kid, the big kid,
Yeah.
and so
Did
I
you
got to
so
do
did
that.
you win career day?
No, I don't think I won, but I gained a lot of experience. I think I was like a solid B. I also like I didn't realize, but so they nowadays in these classrooms they have like big screens, and so I had not brought any kind of slides or
Oh
animations,
God,
and
yeah. I have no idea what a middle school or high school classroom looks
they're
like.
like high tech and they're like so well adjusted. Like the teachers, they go clickety click and it's like on, and like they know how to do it. And you're like, oh, they're very like literate. And I think maybe I and perhaps you were of a generation where that didn't exist. You start with microfiche, and then all of a sudden now you're supposed to know how this pedestal at the lecture hall works, and you're like,
Well, I also think that nowhere has put together a stupider AV setup than NYU. Like I just the how oh my God. Like
well,
the
what's the
setup,
what's the primary complaint? Is it too difficult to navigate?
it's like because they're all kind of like they also want to be compatible with Zoom,
Mm,
right? And so there's like all of these. I mean, one, there's like different systems in different classrooms, right? So
hmm
they're not all the same. They're not streamlined.
hmm
There's often like an entire printed out, kind of half ripped page of single spaced instructions that you're supposed to read. None of them work the same way. Each room has a different set of idiosyncrasies,
hmm
right? I've been in rooms where just the entire front of the classroom is taken up by a giant television and like there's no room for me and I'm like I don't think,
hmm
or where there was one where the projector just broke halfway through the semester and so they no the screen broke and so they just brought in a freestanding projector screen
Yeah.
rather than fixing the fucking projector. Like it just feels like you're always dealing with something that there's a lot of duct tape under the hood and it's not designed in any way to be like single click.
I'm with you on the whole
Like I
thing.
would not be surprised if the NYU school system actually has a more streamlined and efficient AV setup than the multi-billion enterprise that is New York University, which
I I think that there's a lot of legacy systems that just resist their own
yeah.
demise, and so you just have to step over it every time. I find the setup is very. I mean, I mentioned microfiche that they still have that at the business school. They still have that giant thing with the lamp, and you're like, all right, this is in the way. I can't make eye contact with this entire front row section over here because of this thing which I've never used in 12 years. So I hate that with a passion. It's also the podium is stationary, like so you can't move it out of the way. See,
Yeah.
I like to pace. I like to walk around. I like, hey, what do you think? I point at people, point at things. I'm sort of like the Price is Right. Like I sort of
You
you know
gotta you gotta get the lavalier mic. That's what I get. So I'm mic'd up in the room.
I'm
So
mic'd up.
I don't have to be chained behind the podium.
I got a little clicky thingy and I run. I like to mime things. I'm very animated, And so if you then put an obstacle in my path, that's misery. But it's also like then if I then have to bring all my own equipment because I can't use any of this archaic software. It's like I can,
Also,
but
like I'm
it
not
takes too
logging
long.
into my Gmail on this
No,
computer that like 40 other people use.
mm,
First of all, my password is like 40 characters long.
I don't remember any of that. Nope.
It's but like speaking of the well resourcedness of NYU, to follow up on what we were opened with last week, right? We
Mm.
should say the contract faculty strike did not even last long enough to still be active when last week's episode came out.
Listen, listen, it worked.
About 2 days long, and then NYU cracked, and it was sort of like, wow, you could have just done all of this without creating all the totally unnecessary busy work for your administrators, for your staff, for your faculty, that this create, I had to be sent scab spreadsheets where they were requiring us, I'll talk about this now, I don't give a shit, whole thing's over. But they
Hmm.
were like
Hmm.
demanding that we like name people who could replace all of our instructors. They wanted lists of people who would be contacted. There was a 44-page instructional document on what to do if, with the strike and how people would be paid. I mean, it was just, it was an incredible waste of so many people's labor
Hmm.
for a thing that y'all just could have conceded to without that. An enormous waste of our time, for something that you were obviously not going to keep up. It's
Hmm.
it's a very demoralizing place to work for.
Yeah, I understand. It's a the exchange is always time versus money, and they they just didn't want to exchange more of their money for your time
But they were
until they
going
did.
to exchange that money anyway. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but like but that also applies to the inefficiencies of the process. Like, of course, like they should have just given you the money and like everybody get on with their day. That's the right answer. But if you've ever worked for an organization that exceeds 50 employees, then the answer is always we're going to do the most inefficient thing first, whatever the answer, whatever that is. And then it's corporate, academic, it's government, all the same.
You know. Well, once again, capitalism is just such an efficient way to distribute resources. And where we see that principle also in play is in
Once
our
again,
lead story for today, right? To speak about efficiency in resource distribution,
mm.
the PlayStation will cost $100 more because apparently that's how expensive RAM is now. Okay, Champ, what do you have to say about this?
Champ, what do you make of this? It's
What's going on here?
so the
Think,
PlayStation announced
all
another.
things aren't supposed to get more expensive.
It's the well, things are going to get more expensive before they stay that way. It's the number never goes down, right? So Sony announces this second price increase of the year, or
Ugh,
whatever, in the last 12 months, right? And so a PlayStation Pro will now cost $900, 899. The
that's
digital edition is like 600.
what's the so the Pro means what? There's a CD-ROM slot. Is that what the Pro? It can read a Blu-ray. Like what's
It's 2 terabytes and it's cooler, right? It's like just a more beefed version of the base model. What's interesting here is, I guess, a few things. But so one of them is we're quickly approaching this moment where consoles cost $1,000, and I had this conversation with a bunch of people. And
bananagrams? Yeah,
what's bananagrams now?
it's just bananas. That's
Oh, oh, okay. That's an
Keep
expression of
talking. Keep talking.
discontent. Yes, it's true. So people don't like that. People and some people go like, "This analyst is nuts." It's whatever, but it's like that's where we're headed. Like it's coming, $1,000 console. So first part is of course why, right? So here is a run on hardware components because of AI. Yeah, there's nothing you could do about it. A lot of these companies, whether those are chipsets or whether those are solid state memory components, all of that is more expensive now because AI has taken over that whole category. They're selling it at a high price. Even, as scarcity starts to become an issue, as like the manufacturing is struggling to keep up with demand, of course the price just goes up. At the end of that, you see the same with Steam. Steam machines are now being repriced because Valve goes, oh, whoops, it's more expensive now because everybody's running down the prices on this thing.
Yeah.
So Sony, so the first thing is the run on hardware components by AI. Second one is of course this like ridiculousness around tariffs. On the one hand, I guess the good news is that the Supreme Court has ruled that it's illegal, right?
Well, we'll see if that matters.
Well, we'll see if that actually gets, of course, done or that it's
This little thing
enforced.
called enforcement. Seems to
Yeah,
not be a big issue for this administration.
consequence. Never heard of it, and so it's fine, I guess. But it's like, that was super stupid, and it's a self-inflicted error. Like, why would you do this? And it's because, there's a few different studies that have come out in the last couple of months, and the Financial Times ran an article that the headline reads, consumers pay for 90% of the tariffs, right? So none of this is actually none of this has anything to do with the original plan.
Yeah,
They're just making people more broke. And shall we add then, of course, the war in Iran? It's like where now the Strait of Hormuz is closed, making shipments more expensive, also
yeah.
making
Oil prices.
oil prices
Somehow
go up.
it's trans people's fault, but
Well, I'd like to see
Here's
the memo on that.
here's here's one thing I think about a lot is that so we have this situation where okay, so there's a limited number of chip fabulators,
Mhm, mhm,
and the AI companies horn in and they can offer more and more money, but only because their own valuations are so inflated by the AI bubble,
mhm.
right? Like this is it's they actually like it's just that they're flush with capital at this moment and can burn it in advantage of their of beating their beating the other competitors for these chips,
Mhm.
right? But all of it's speculative, right? It's like the only reason they're able to pay more for it is not because they are producing money. Like it's that they are overvalued or
Mhm.
basically being, these prices are being engineered by a market that needs this technology to succeed, but I think by most accounts is currently not succeeding, right?
It's um it's a staggering amount of money without without a proven revenue model, right? So OpenAI raised 122 billion dollars this week,
Yep.
which puts its post money valuation at 852 billion, so close to $1 trillion.
That's what that's more than Mark Zuckerberg spent on the metaverse.
Listen, that is more than the GDP of several countries, and so it's just an unrealistic amount of money, and so it's
Totally unrealistic.
I think, problematic in so many ways, but perhaps it goes a little bit beyond the scope here. But it's because of these large companies and these high valuations that everybody's putting in. It just raises prices all around, and it just puts a lot of pressure on the consumer market and everybody else. And so, is Sony wrong for raising prices? Well, nobody
Well,
wants
yeah.
that,
One
but
one
you
of my
know,
questions is should they have just eaten it?
well, I think so. That's the
Like
short
like
answer.
consoles are by design low margin devices.
Uh huh.
It's
Correct.
always a game of installed base.
Correct.
Do they just not care anymore? Like is installed base not the thing you're after anymore? But should they have sold them on a loss because where they recoup it is in the subscription model down the road?
I totally agree. I think they should have just taken the loss or make it like, I guess you can't increase it $50 at a time and do it too many times. People will start to really hate you. But we're at the end of the life cycle, which means that most consumers are very cost conscious. They just want
Yeah, they're
deals.
not going to buy it anyway if they haven't already, right?
Why
Or
would you raise prices now? And so, of course you could say, well, this is the result of all this mess. And here's where, for instance, Sony struggles more than Xbox because Sony has this very elaborate ecosystem of like trade routes and like all these distributors and retail relationships. So it gets disproportionately hit with things like an increase in gas prices, for instance, as opposed to other companies. But at the same time, it's not a good moment for it. They have already stepped out of they started a joint venture with TCL. I think we mentioned this before, where a Chinese manufacturer is now 51% owner of Sony TV production. And
hmm,
so they're offloading a lot of the hardware across the organization, not just for the gaming divisions. So it suggests to me that they're either going to make it very expensive or they're going to just get rid of it and outsource the thing in the same way that Xbox has been doing
hmm.
with their like AMD and the Asus ROG Ally kind of relationships. All of which to say is that the console is not going anywhere. I think that the business model is shifting and it's just accelerating because of this mess, right? That this probably was going to be the case anyways. I don't think $1,000 console was ever out of reach. That was always going to happen. It's just I think we're getting there faster. This probably was going to be the second half of the next life cycle, but I guess we're here now. Thanks, Obama.
Obama? How'd he get in here?
Isn't that all his fault? Isn't that isn't that isn't this all very smart strategy going on? No, this is obviously self-inflicted, a war of choice, and it's just total nonsense. And so, if you want to look for a culprit, there's one.
All right. So that's the hardware side. But
Mm-hmm.
also, so this week or last week,
Mm-hmm.
interesting story up on GameIndustry.biz headline: German games market rose 4% in 2025. This is
Mm-hmm.
consumption, not industry, right?
Mm-hmm.
To 9.4 bill, driven by hardware sales. But the more interesting point is that the computer and video game submarket sales dropped 13%. And
Okay.
so we're
Why is that?
looking,
Why is that more interesting to you?
because what it tells us is that like the revenue model is increasingly tilting towards subscription and in-app purchases even in the console market,
Mm-hmm.
right? That like that tilt, right? This exact thing I said where it's like PlayStation should just eat the cost
Mm-hmm.
because they reap it on the other side with the subscription model or whatever, or the cut they take out of their in-house store, right? I mean, you have complete capture now, right? Nobody's going to GameStop to buy I mean, interestingly, this is even just like sales of single standalone games
Mm-hmm.
down, right? But they're taking a cut of every transaction that's happening on that platform. That should be sufficient, right?
Mm-hmm.
That is surely making them more revenue
Mm-hmm.
than what single game sales probably were.
Mm-hmm.
So it just seems like a portent of things to come. Like, I'm generally kind of like ugh on the subscription model precisely because it just seems like a bad rap for the consumer in the long run.
You
Uh,
think so?
mm, Kinda, yeah. I mean, like now that the prices have actually gone up in more relationship to what they actually cost. I mean, I realized that if I held an Xbox One to play the new Power
Mm-hmm.
Wash Simulator 2, not to take it back to my favorite thing, but I would have to pay for the like ultra subscription, and that would cost me more in 2 months than it would to just buy the game outright,
Mm-hmm.
right? And it's like I'm not playing this game 24 hours a day. Like I might spend 2 or 3 months getting through it slowly over time, at which point Power Wash Simulator has cost me $90. Like that does seem ridiculous, right? So I just canceled it and bought the damn game. I did the same for a game like Cyberpunk,
Mm-hmm.
right? Which is a game you're going to spend months on no matter what. That's 100 hours plus game,
Mm-hmm.
right? You're paying $30 a month to access a game that you can buy for 80. Like this just like
I think that you point exactly the source. You point out the sore spot. I think that's the flaw in the model. I think the
well, I
subscription.
don't think it's the flaw for the consumer,
Yeah,
right?
no, that's what I
Like
mean. It's like
it's
like most people can do math. Like they're not unaware
you know,
of well, not everybody likes math, Lane. That's different. It's it's the but people, it's discretionary income. So eventually they go, do I want to keep HBO Max? Do I want to watch Netflix? Do I need 17 subscription services all around entertainment at the same time? I don't even use these three or whatever. There's services that help you cull your subscriptions every month. It's like just like, well, you haven't checked in on this, you haven't watched any of that. So and they add up pretty quickly. I mean, you're talking about hundreds
and
of
yet
dollars.
the data seems to suggest that that the subscription and in-app purchase is the model, that's where the revenue's coming from. The single purchase price is, the amount of multiplication I'm willing to do in my head might be greater than the average bear. or that the trade-off of being able to move from one game to another. I mean, I would be fascinated to see usage metrics, right? How many games does a if you're on a subscription to, PlayStation or Xbox, how many games are you playing? How
Hmm.
how how diverse is your appetite actually? What is the average?
Hmm.
I want
No,
that mean mode median. Do you know that data? Do they ever give that to you? You allowed
uh,
to tell me?
it's classified.
NDA.
Yeah, it's the fundamental problem I think is that they haven't quite figured out the finer points on the differentiation for customers. Like someone like you would do $10 a month,
Yeah,
and you'd play your Power Wash Simulator and then your Cyberpunk, and you'd be fine. And then on an annualized basis, you'd play $400 worth of games, and you'd pay 120. That'd be a fair exchange. And they would benefit from that in a variety of ways because maybe you get some DLC or whatever. You're part of the ecosystem, so you spend some money somewhere else. I think that's how subscription can be incredibly effective. But they make everybody pay $30 to get to the good stuff. It's like, okay, that's a little aggressive, and like you have the same argument around Call of Duty. We can talk about whether or not the last one was a big success or not. But it's an expensive premium game. They spend a lot of money on getting the companies we discussed. Is it fair? Like, well, day and date releases, yes. If you're a big fan, you'll pay the extra money just to kind of have it
yeah,
first. But people are acutely aware that they're now spending $200 in a game that costs $80.
yeah.
That makes no sense.
So do you think we're going to see a reverse of this,
I think we're going to see.
or is Germany a unique market?
Well, I think Germany is going to be a signal to like the game passes of the world, where you say, in one of the most advanced, in this case, the largest economy in Europe, you know, that's not a sustainable model. Like you have to kind of change it up a little
But
bit,
the
right?
data isn't proving that yet. That's all.
No, but I was saying it's like so your single purchases are going away, and it's like sure, but that's going to turn. Like that's not a sustainable thing.
Mm.
So they're gonna, So I guess another way to put it is like it's going to be a K-shaped economy.
Oh,
The top layer of households that can afford to, they will continue to just increase the spending, and they'll be sort of elastic about it. They don't care. And everybody else is going to look for discounts and cheaper versions of it. And so this is where the origin of like ad-based subscription tiers comes in. Like as the game loads, you're going to be watching an ad or two, just like you do on Amazon Prime.
hmm.
You pay for Amazon Prime, and yet you watch ads at this also. It's a very weird model, and people accept that. People are fine with that. $7 a month, $8 a
Yeah.
month, no problem. So if we're going to see like an $8 version or a $15 version of Game Pass with ads, something like that, and PlayStation will probably be not as quick about it, but they might do that too.
Yeah. I mean, the other interesting thing about seeing, Germany in on this headline was just like, we had just been talking about what else is out there besides GDC.
Hmm.
Gamescom makes a intriguing bid as a more internationalized alternative to a conference like that, right? Just kind of, it's like if you're trying to look for another rising star, obviously Germany is weak in the arena of its homegrown industry,
Hmm. Hmm.
but it's also very centrally located. It has a very strong consumer market.
Germany's centrally located. Is that?
Well, I mean, like all the other European countries can get there.
I would argue that the Netherlands is much more centrally located.
That's right. Why aren't we holding our international game industry conference in the Netherlands?
Why aren't more people talking about Holland? No, it's all true. So Germany has a problem that I think is not unique, but you know that it hasn't been addressed in a long time. So its economic structure relies very much on large manufacturing industries, making cars, that kind of stuff. And as a result, they haven't really invested in a knowledge-based economy. And
Hmm.
so there's a whole book called Kaput, which is basically that argument that says, yeah, they should have, but they didn't. It is something that we saw 20 years ago in Korea, where they said very clearly, we're going to be internet based from here on out. Singapore does the same thing. They just lay a bunch of thick pipelines and just wire the whole place, and they start pushing towards industries and company types that do well in a internet heavy kind of environment. I think Saudi Arabia is another good example with their Horizon 2030, where they just push out of oil into the internet, technology, media, and entertainment, that kind of thing. Germany is the European equivalent of that.
Hmm.
They've been behind for a long time. They've benefited from a very prosperous industry from the fact that they are a large, robust economy for decades, and so they haven't really been incentivized to change up until now. And they're watching Finland and Sweden and Poland and Turkey and France and England all making money off of tech and other industries. And gaming, you said this, I think, really well. It's like gaming becomes this on ramp into the larger tech economy. And Germany just isn't very present in that. So it's interesting to see how there is a consumer market, but basically you're just selling foreign made content to
Yep.
German consumers. Better to have your own supply side, better to have your own industry and so on. So that's why you see Angela Merkel show up at Gamescom and go, "Hello, come to Germany." It's because she's promoting the economy. She's not there because she's a diehard cyberpunk fan. I mean, maybe she is. I suspect she might be.
I bet she's playing like Bubble Blast on her iPhone or something.
I play the Bubble Blast. That's so nice.
No, German probably like a some fucking Scrabble clone or crosswords. Something a little more rigorous.
And it's called Krutzenwürzen. You're like, Jesus.
All right, I'm not European. I think it's probably inappropriate for me to put on a fake German accent.
It's a it's deeply offensive.
Yeah, I
That
don't I
that's
don't I don't need that.
that's the humor of it. If you're not offended, it's not funny.
What about we should go to exit tickets, but I also did you see that the Guardian gave a 1-star review to the new Mario movie?
Yeah, I was wondering if you caught that because I asked these kids this morning. I can call them kids because they're 13. They're all like, "Yeah, I'm gonna go see the movie," because they're all thinking the first Mario movie was a big hit. But why did it get 1 star?
They just said it was terrible.
Okay, but
Like kind of like they called it a screensaver, which is a pretty appalling
this is bad,
description. Just
bad
kind of
endorsement.
like flat, unfunny, um, trying too hard, like just like a real disappointment, I guess. After, I mean, I got the sense that the reviewer did not necessarily love the last one, but a 1-star review. Like I remember the Guardian once did a article about how few 1-star reviews there had ever been and like what were the movies that iconically got 1-star reviews, and so it felt quite notable. See, I
Hmm.
was like, a 1-star review, that you mean it, you know?
That's like
Like,
somebody
yeah,
thought about it,
yeah,
called their parents, and then like I gotta
yeah,
move forward with this.
yeah.
Okay, that's a rough outcome. I don't know. I mean, I didn't feel like the first one had any kind of mentionable plot or narrative structure to it. It's like so. It's like there. I mean, it just was this chaotic set of components that they molded into like, and then Bowser loses. But it was such a mishmash of things that it didn't really feel like. I didn't think that we were going to value the Mario franchise box office releases by the emotional depth and the character development of its storylines.
I did find this, speaking of offensive European representation, in reference to Mario, Italian Brooklyn based plumbers Mario and Luigi. This kind of stereotype is evidently the last in mainstream entertainment to be considered offensive.
It's funny. I don't know. I'm definitely going to see it, but that's just because I have to.
The kids are going to be into it.
Well, I mean, like, who am I? If can I speak about this industry if I haven't seen this stupid movie? It's like I'm just so happy I don't have to play all these like brain rot games. Like it's like, oof, it's like it's a whole other thing.
Ticket for us?
I do. Okay, so I have a few options, but I'm gonna open with my favorite one. So last week we talked about the PC market, and
No, last week we talked about console prices.
no, not you
Oh,
and me
sorry.
in my class. Not everything is about you, Lane. I know other people outside of this,
Okay, carry on.
like Keaton, and no. So they I had a similar moment as you were describing earlier, whereas like I'm explaining the PC market and how basically console had won. It was sort of the dominant form factor and device because it was closed in and whatever, more organized, easier, less risky for developers. And then PC becomes relevant again once digitalization takes hold and Valve comes out with Steam. And along the line of the success with Steam was this almost like this T junction where a lot of publishers were worried about piracy and worried about places like Russia because they would lose a lot of content or a lot of value. And then there's Gabe Newell on the other end, and he says, well, piracy is just a market inefficiency. It's not actually a problem to solve other than like making things accessible to audiences. So students like that. They sort of jumped up, like, oh, I never stole anything. And it's really interesting to see. So I gave him some of my Black Hat Day anecdotes of back in the day when here's what the internet would look like on campus, and here's what you could do. And one of my favorite anecdotes in that context is, remember iTunes on the
Yes.
Mac? Well, so you could install this application that would allow you to see everybody else's iTunes library on campus. And so you would just have 1 kabillion songs, and you could download them directly from the app onto your hard drive. You're
Whoa.
like, this is awesome. So that's what we would do until, of course, they stopped that. And, of course, I never did that myself,
Of course.
but it's there's like, but it was a different experience of the internet, right? And right now, everything is so boxed in. And so you realize that a lot of them are totally finding ways to not pay for things anyways. And so one question I got is like, I wanted to learn for, in all caps, educational purposes, how hard it is to pirate console games. And I'm curious what your take is in terms of piracy and sort of the role of piracy today in gaming as it was before. Like, how would you treat the topic of piracy, in your class, for instance?
Hmm. I mean, I'm sensitive to not saying anything that's going to make me sound stupid, but my sense is that, I mean, so is piracy always plausible? Possible? Yes, always. Is it particularly plausible on a console? Not especially. Not with all of the DRM. Same goes for mobile games. You never hear anyone talk about piracy in mobile games,
Right?
right? Right? It's just not a thing. It doesn't exist,
Hmm.
right? Um,
So they've exterminated piracy.
well, in order for piracy to happen, in the old school days of like, where there were gray market rips of, like when you have like the Famiclone era in China, Taiwan, East Asia, right? And a lot of those consoles, they moved to, parts of Latin America, they moved
Hmm.
to East Africa, right? All of that, most of the games that were played on those were ripped off, right? But they
Hmm.
were literally ripped off the ROM and encoded onto other ROMs that were then sold under kind of quasi localized names in
Hmm.
those specific markets, right? I don't know where you would find like do I bet in some other country maybe there's a world for that for like Call of Duty 8 or something, but like I mean I don't even know how you would put the thing in an Xbox, right? I mean this has been one of the great gains of digital distribution is that it is so much easier to wall off your garden, right?
Hmm.
Which is why I think, you know, mobile is iconic here, right? There is no piracy is not a conversation.
Well,
Um,
that's very interesting, right? I mean, in many ways, like piracy has determined and sort of the strategy and the behavior of large publishers in a very direct way, right?
I mean,
It's
now that we have to be connected to the internet all the time, or certainly at least to initially download the game or to kind of authorize it,
Mhm.
I mean, could you, the level of manufacturing required, it could be duped, sure.
Hmm.
A CD-ROM for a console game, but the 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 level of sophistication of that duplication process would have to be pretty high. I just don't know that there's that much of a market for it, at least in the United States. Obviously, piracy, has shaped things like the rise of microtrans. One of the urban myths of the microtransaction is that it emerges in China as a response to loss prevention, right?
Mm-hmm.
So in China, the whole standard is like game piracy. So how can Chinese game developers make money? Well, they figure out to make money by charging you for, they give away the game for free and they charge you for things inside the game, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so piracy has been knitted up with some of the biggest, with like significant, whether you want to call them innovations or developments in both like, kind of game monetization methods, but also things like DRM, right? I think where this impacts kind of my world are these, what companies like or I guess like an organization like the ESA is more concerned about are people being able to like play a game without
Mm-hmm.
like remotely or something without paying for it, right? And that's where they interfere with like the research activities of folks who want to be able to like break DRM for the purpose of game preservation and things like that. Yeah, that's my
We
thought
t-
about that.
yeah, we talked about that in the past. I
Yeah.
remember it. Yeah, in so many ways, it seems like, I mean, piracy is a bit of sort of the consumer side of things, right? It's sort of like, oh, it's the money, but in a world that is based on data centers and sort of tech infrastructure, like you still have to deal with supply and demand allocations. Meaning, if you have 1,000 titles in your portfolio as a platform or as a publisher, are you really going to host those on every single data center around the world to make sure that just in case somebody wants to play Rayman 2 in Belgium on Sunday, then they can download it right away? It's like you can say, yeah, it's not available. And so, it's the reason why banks don't have 100. They're not 100% solvable, right? They have only a certain amount of cash in the banks relative to the total holdings of that bank and all their accounts, because that doesn't make any sense. And so at some point you're going to have a difference where what a lot of people want to play is not going to be available, and that's an existential challenge, absolutely. But it also doesn't make any economic sense to always have all of your money in every bank all the time. So so I think it's a fun. So that's a bit of a supply side problem. But like, how do you account for it in a digital environment, and is that fair? I do think that every publisher should have some kind of legal or obligation to maintain one server somewhere that hosts all of their content, and whatever only licensed historians and researchers and academics and whoever else can download from there. But it's
Or
not
they just let us handle it.
well. Well, sure, but like, is it that hard for them to do this? Like, what would it cost them? What's the effort here? And so they could be part of.
Yeah, until the company goes belly up and no one knows who owns fucking anything,
Well, no,
right?
then its ownership would like pass over to
I think
Lane
it's
and
actually
friends.
just easier to tell the ESA to stop cock blocking us.
All right, all right. It's
You can
well,
let
I
me
mean,
keep
but
your
I
notes
don't think it's I
next time
don't
you
think I think
hang out
this
with
I think this goes beyond the ESA's purview. Like, I think that this is more of a like an industry level issue, right? A global industry. Like, ESA does, take up a big part in the US, but like the world is bigger than the US, right? It's like, where
Yeah,
does
but
any
I
of
mean,
this
if
go?
the question is still like, what role does piracy play
Hmm.
in the game industry? I mean, in at least you'll never solve it 100%, but it's a pretty solved problem, I think, in
Hmm.
most console and mobile.
Hmm.
And then it only kind of lags around in PC, and even then, you would have to be like Gaming is not a private act anymore, right? The company, for the most part, the company that made your game knows when you're playing it.
Hmm.
And really, these kinds of other conversations largely apply only to kind of like retro games, old games, right? Anyway,
Yeah. Well, what's retro now is going to be, the games we play today are going to be retro in 10, 15 years. So,
yes, yes.
you know, okay.
We should wrap it.
Another episode in the can.
Yeah, another great piece of work that we didn't sweat over. That's not us saying we didn't do hard work, but
It's,
we're
it's the culmination of years of
yeah, years of practice and experience
knowledge based labor.
running a podcast. Okay.
It's spring in New York.
Oh my god, it's so good out. We should go outside.
Yes.
You want to commit to that? All right. Be my accountability buddy. Let's go hang out in the nice, nice weather.
Oh, can't wait.
With that, good night and Luki. Unboxing, Play and Profit for the Gaming Curious is an independent production by Joost van Dreunen and Lane Nooney. Our producer is Keaton Ireland. Our logo was designed by Moira Zhang. For more from Unboxing, subscribe to our newsletter at buttondown.com/unboxingpodcast. Unboxing episodes can be found on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcast, and wherever else you get your content.